yet another live edition of the Football Tribe with me, your usual suspect, Robert K. Sakos. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're having a wonderful week. Well, I wish I could say the same for Arsenal fans, but unfortunately, that's not the case. We are here on a very unfortunate note. What could pass as a sad note, depending on which way you look at it, because Arsenal's injury troubles for this season have continued. Yet, despite going away for the Dubai mid-season training camp, for that warm weather, regrouping, re-energizing, recalibrating, revisiting some of their strategies, their playing styles and all, it looks like their injury woes that have followed them to as far as Dubai. Prior to them leaving for Dubai, they had already lost another player to injury, and that was Gabriel Martinelli during their final game leading to that camp, and that was Gabriel Martinelli, who they lost in that 2-0 defeat at the hands of Newcastle in the return leg of the Carabao Cup semi-finals, which they eventually lost by 4-0 on aggregate. So during that game, they lost their forward in Gabriel Martinelli, who it has since been reported that could be sidelined for at least more than a month. That means you count the rest of February and possibly the whole of March, because you expect that if he returns in mid-March, then you will have at least 2 weeks of training before he is reintegrated back into the squad. So do expect that kind of revelation or things or scenario of things to pan out that way. So for me, I do think it's very, very unfortunate for the Gunners from what we gather. And the reason as why I say it does pile on, because we already know they were already suffering with injuries. We already know that Bukayo Saka was out. It required surgery for him to be treated because he did tear his hamstring, and he has since returned to outdoor rehabilitation. We did see photos of him in Dubai starting his rehabilitation, doing some physicals there. He does look a bit sharp, he does look a bit fit, but I do not think Arsenal would be eager to rush him into recovering on time to, get him playing. So I do not think they really want to risk him, given what they've experienced over the course of the season. So according to David Austin, here's what he had to say a couple of days ago about Gabriel Martinelli. He says Gabriel Martinelli faces more than a month on the sidelines with a hamstring injury suffered in Arsenal's loss to Newcastle. Early indications suggest that the 23-year-old winger could miss Arsenal's Premier League games versus Leicester City, versus Western United, versus Nottingham Forest, and potentially Manchester United, as well as I think Chelsea. Is it Chelsea? And possibly in between there, of course, we do know that Arsenal will be in the UEFA Champions League and knockout stages at the round of 16. So Gabriel Martinelli will potentially miss at least some of these games, or if not all these games. So that's very unfortunate. But as we are here today, Arsenal have yet lost another player to injury, and this time around, unfortunately, it's for the remainder of the season, and that's the worrying bit. That's none other than Kai Havertz. Yes, yesterday we did learn that he had suffered an injury in Dubai and that it was a muscular injury, but we didn't know to what extent and what kind of problem it would have been. Many of us had hoped that maybe it's tightness in his muscle, and maybe he will be able to rest that off, possibly similar to what Ricardo Carafiori suffered a couple of weeks, if not months ago. But unfortunately, that's not the case, because again, Kai Havertz has been ruled out for the remainder of the season. And this is according to the latest reports. Again, quoting David Ornstein. We all know David Ornstein, the athletic reporter there, one of us, the leading reporters that does cover Arsenal for the Athletic. And here is what he has to say, that Kai Havertz is set to miss the rest of the season through injury. Arsenal forward suffered a torn hamstring during the training camp, during training at Arsenal's training camp in Dubai. It is unclear whether the 25-year-old German international will require surgery, but focus is getting him fit for the 2026 campaign. Now, this is very significant and probably very detrimental to all Arsenal's plans and endeavors for the remainder of the season, because not just weeks gone by or even months gone by, we can date this to as far back as last season, when Arsenal just signed Kai Havertz. We all know that he had a very horrible start to his Arsenal career. He did struggle to settle in the team. He was being played as a midfielder. He did seem to click, and then eventually Mikel Arteta tried him as a forward. Things, of course, did not click from the onset, but he persisted with him, and eventually things started to fall in place and managed to score, I think, a record of 14 goals in the entire season, which was the most he had ever scored ever since moving to England. Remember, he initially was at Chelsea. So, and then this season, he had already beaten that same record, because last season he scored 14 goals. This season, he had already scored at least 15 goals across all competitions. Now, unfortunately, he won't be able to add to that tally to extend it any further, because this is a season-ending injury. It's a torn hamstring. Like David Austin says, it's unclear at the moment whether he will need surgery, like Bukayo Saka had to go through, or he may not need surgery. The hope is that he won't need surgery, but the mere fact that he is out for the rest of the season, for me, is a very defining. It's a very pivotal moment for Arsenal's title pursuits, not just in the Premier League as well, but as well as the UEFA Champions League, because they are short. We already knew going into the season that we were short on strikers. Now Kai Havertz is out for the rest of the season. This is just about a month or so after Gabriel Jesus suffered an anterior cruciate ligament injury that ruled him out for the remainder of the season. So clearly, things are not clicking for Arsenal. Things are not going their way. This is as unlucky as things come for Arsenal. For purposes of history, I think this kind of reminds me of I think it was it the 2007-2008 Premier League season, when again around the month of February they did lose so many players to injury. I think the likes of Jack Wilshere, Aaron Ramsey. I think in one of between 2007 and 2010 or 11 thereabout, in those title pursuing seasons, they did Aaron Ramsey broke a leg. You had Eduardo break a leg. For those of you that remember him, you had players like Thomas Brzezinski suffering very horrible injuries that eventually hampered Arsenal's progress as far as title pursuers goes. So this is similar to that you've already lost Gabriel Jesus to injury, and then you're losing Kai Havertz to injury, both for the remainder of the season. And then you have Bukayo Saka, who is just recovering from injury, with speculation having it that the earliest he can be available, fully fit and engaged, is April. So that's a month and a half from now. That's a very long period of time in the game of football, where you sometimes play at least 3 games a week. Now, fortunately for Arsenal, they're out of the Carabao Cup, they're up to the FA Cup, so that means they play only the Premier League and the UEFA Champions League at the moment. Nonetheless, that literally means, or could literally mean, that at least you're playing, in some weeks you're playing 2 games a week, in another you're playing 3, depending on how you look at it. So you have the Premier League back-to-back weekends, actually Saturday or Saturday-Sunday, depending, and then in midweek you have the UEFA Champions League. So that's, for me, that's very troubling. And then a player that you could have maybe played as a false 9 in Gabriel Martinelli is also out injured. So what options does that leave with Arsenal? It leaves Arsenal with at least 2 options, with about 2 concrete options, and then maybe the rest of them would be gambles. First of the options is Raheem Sterling. We all know that he can be played in that center forward role, not because it suits him, not because he's built for it in any way, but as a false 9, your options are really limited. So you have Raheem Sterling, for whom we were discussing just yesterday about players that are going to leave Arsenal this summer, that he has not impressed during his loan spell. So we all know that he is not impressed, and I do not expect that Arsenal fans will have any higher expectations beyond those they have held in him, based on what we've seen so far this season, go for the rest of the season, should he be given the chance to lead the Arsenal forward lines. Then the other player is Leandro Trossard. Now, he's a very good forward, Leandro Trossard. And again, we did discussing yesterday, for those of you that managed to watch that video, when we were looking at the 14 players that will leave Arsenal this summer. For those of you that have not yet watched it, yes, go to the channel and watch that video. Very interesting. We looked at 14 players that will leave Arsenal in the summer, and Leandro Trossard was one of those that could leave the club. So anyway, if you're new, do not forget to subscribe to the channel as well. So we looked at Leandro Trossard. Now, we all know that Leandro Trossard is a forward, but he prefers to play as a number 10 as opposed to being a number 9. I don't know if you guys make sense of that. He doesn't want to play that lead role of being the lead striker. He wants to play as the number 10, being behind another striker. And then we've seen he likes to, although he's quite efficient with both legs, he prefers to come off the left oftentimes and that kind of thing. So playing him as a striker is not something very ideal, but at this point in time, it will be a necessary evil. Then the other options, like I said, those are the two major options: Raheem Sterling and Leandro Trossard. Those are the options that Arsenal will have as far as strikers go for both the Premier League and the UEFA Champions League. The others will be gambles. Ethan Nwaneri, you could play him as a false 9, but again, it will be too much to ask of a 17-year-old. My expectation is that you wouldn't ask him of that to be your lead striker. But the lack of experience is also still young. He can easily get bullied by defenders. I mean, put him face to face with a Virgil van Dijk, he's going to get bullied. He's going to get bullied. Put him face to face with a Lewis Dunk, considering that Arsenal had to play, Brighton. Put him face to face with the Fabian Schär. Who knows? I mean, it's too much to ask. Even if you are putting him face to face with the Pau Torres, it will be too much to ask of the 17-year-old in Ethan Nwaneri. Yes, he's a very good player, but being a striker, being the person that receives that long ball from the Arsenal goalkeeper, from the Arsenal defenders, and holding up play to wait for the others to engage them, is a little too much to ask. And then, of course, the other option that has been mentioned, I think, by the Telegram, that's a UK-based English, newspaper. They say Mikel Merino, that Arsenal could look to Mikel Merino. He has the height, he can receive the long balls, he can hold up play, and that kind of thing. I mean, for a midfielder who has struggled to have consistently good performances, you want to play him as a striker. Like I said, some of these are just ideas that are even far-fetched in their own nature. So it makes Mikel Arteta's work more difficult. But you'd argue that he has only himself to blame, in part, for this particular one, because he let go of Eddie Nketiah, refused to replace him. Never mind that Eddie Nketiah wasn't hitting the goals that much, because he only managed to score 5, I think, last season in the Premier League, including one of them being a hat-trick against Sheffield, I think, United. So clearly, things are not going Arsenal's way as far as injuries are concerned, but Mikel Arteta will only have himself to blame. In January, he kept saying we only need a player that is going to improve us, that is going to be... Now, that caliber of player that is going to be better than those that you already have, I mean, is a difficult one to get in the January transfer market. And if you're to get them, you must be willing to pay a hefty sum. Now, eventually, they did not sign anyone because they said they deemed that the market did not offer them the opportunities that they would have wanted. Maybe that was just PR for Mikel Arteta, but deep down he was furious with his bosses. And I do remember saying that they had failed in their objectives in the January transfer market, horribly failed. Now, personally, I would have gotten a kind of, even if it were a Class B striker, just to be there as an option, because now this is what we are looking at. You've lost your striker in Kai Havertz, who we all know is just a hybrid of a striker. It's not naturally one. And looks like your team is even worse than it was at that point when you needed to buy one. Two, or the other argument I do have to place forward is that all the Arsenal fans that have been, lambasting Kai Havertz over the last couple of weeks or so and saying he's horrible, he's not good enough, he's not fit to be an Arsenal player and that kind of thing. How are you guys feeling at the moment? How come some of you are the same people mourning about him being injured for the rest of the season? I mean, why the double standards? Why the double standards? Suddenly he's injured for the rest of the season, and now you're mourning that you're finished. Well, it's just the start, because how many games do we have left to play? About 14 or so? Yes, about 14 games are possibly left to play in the season. That's a good number of games, or a whole lot of games. So, Arsenal fans, do let me know what this means to you, to your team, whether it changes your predictions for where you think your team could finish at the end of the season. For those of you that had predicted that Arsenal would win the Premier League title this season, the likes of Kasuku, yes, Kuku Wazabanga, greetings to you, sir. Now, where does this leave Arsenal's title hopes? Arsenal fans, King Saka. I hope I pronounce your name rightly, sir. So, what does this mean to you, to Arsenal's title challenge in the Premier League? What does it mean for their title hopes in the UEFA Champions League now that they have lost Kai Havertz for the rest of the season? When Bukayo Saka does not return until April, when Gabriel Martinelli is out for at least a month, when Gabriel Jesus is out for the remainder of the season. Now, in the injury troubles do not end there, because while we thought Takahiro Tomiyasu was on the verge of returning, he is considering having a second knee surgery. Okay, not a good sign for Arsenal. Not a good sign for Arsenal, unfortunately, because they ought to do better. Usually with injuries, there's not much you can control, because these are unfortunate happenings. Players do get injured in training, they do get injured during match games, players do get injured during even mere warm-ups in the build-up to a game. So anything can happen to any player. They can pull a hamstring, they can get a knock, they can twist an ankle, and all that kind of thing. So I do feel that Arsenal's title hopes across all fronts, that's in the Premier League and the UEFA Champions League, are as good as done with this loss. Because while Kai Havertz may not score in every game, may squander so many opportunities, like we did see him squander an opportunity against Man City before scoring on the other end, he does have a lot to offer to this Arsenal side in terms of his, hold-up play up front, in terms of winning those aerial duels. So, Arsenal fans, do let me know what you think. So, you have Ben White recovering from injury, Tomiyasu is out, Gabriel Martinelli out, Gabriel Jesus out, Kai Havertz out, Bukayo Saka out. I mean, name it all. And who knows the other players that they could lose to injury. Can Mikel Arteta look to the academy to deliver him some options that he could consider for a forward and midfielders? We are waiting to see how he does deal with this kind of situation. But my hope, my expectation, my vision all point to one thing, that Arsenal are as good as done. Not that their season ends here, but this is a significant moment in their season. Whatever title hopes they had held going forward for the remainder of the season, I'm sure they're going to take a huge knock off their confidence because of that Kai Havertz injury. And of course, in conjunction with the injuries of all the others in Bukayo Saka and Gabriel Martinelli. Sorry. So, anyways, allow me to leave it at that. If you're new, do not forget to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share, and I'll see you next time. Otherwise, stay blessed.